Um, I think the only real fun talking point, and we haven't spoken since the Real Sociedad game either. So, fun talking point from those two games is obviously Arda Güler. Um, so I want to get your thoughts, and just obviously this is some of the largest sample size we have of him now. Um, I've liked a lot of what I've seen, even in those. I know you've called it out before, Kiyan, on Twitter. Just his small 2 minute cameos. He always does something, and I like what I see. I'm just trying to think of long-term projections for him and where I see him in terms of the fit in the squad. And I don't know if I see him as a winger, as a right winger.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know that that's long term going to be his best position. I don't think he has um, the typical just physicality and speed we see typical of those players, and just kind of the Madrid system. But I do see him. I think if he can continue to build out his frame, continue to work on his two-way presence, I could see him becoming like advanced number 8 and playing almost like the role Odegaard played in Real Sociedad, and the role he plays now for Arsenal. Even I mean, I think that's where I could see him more long term. Um, and I think what impressed me the most in the Real Sociedad game was just his ability to escape the press and be so press resistant, and just he's just one of those players that naturally knows where and how to find space, and just creates space and time on his own. And those players are so unique, they're so special. It was Modric-esque. And so I think to see some of that was really cool. And I think long term, I don't know if that I see him long term as a winger. I just want to get your guys' opinion on that.
Do you think, because with him, I mean, I agree with you about his positioning, by the way. Like, you look at him, he's basically got the Odegaard, Ozil, Kubo kind of profile, David Silva, these kind of guys, Bernardo Silva, pseudo right wingers who can play in a double 10. They can play as a 10, as a right
Yeah.
winger, but not as a traditional right winger. I kind of, in some sense, worry about that just because we've seen like like Isco was faded out, and then Odegaard, like the whole thing with them was the narrative was,
James
well,
too.
James, this position doesn't exist. Not in Real
Yep.
Madrid, not now. It does sometimes, it doesn't right now, and then you just kind of like see these guys faded out. But the one thing I would always argued about these guys is like you don't have to play them as a 10. James could play the right wing. Isco could play the left wing. Odegaard can play the right wing. No, it's not like your traditional 90s, Luis Figo type winger going down, right foot, right wing, going down and burning people and putting a cross in, but it's just a different profile. So, like, A, he has to learn to play on the right wing, and B, we have to be accommodating a little bit in some sense to his talent. Yash, where do you see his future?
Yeah, I agree with Matt. As he was speaking, the immediate thought and even the first impressions that we had of Guler when he joined, it was sort of like, okay, this looks like another kid who can break lines, is great at generating space, is great between the lines, has good vision, sort of reminded of, what Odegaard was. And as we have seen him play, we have seen those moments of magic, even in whatever cameos he has had, and now with starts. And I hope we will get to see a lot more before the end of the season. And yeah, that was always my concern. Like, yes, this player is very exciting, but where would he fit in? And as much as I would, he's still developing. He will still add some more muscle. He'll still develop physically as well because he's not there yet. I would love to see him become that, advanced eight sort of position. But when it comes to midfield, and I think about it, you've got Chouameni, you've got Kamavinga, you've got Fede Valverde. So where does, Guler come into the picture here? Probably from the bench, even if he like manages to get that physical ability and turn himself into an advanced eight. Where does that come in? So I think the best bet could, in my opinion, would probably be to, take him to the right flank, play that sort of inverted winger role where he's coming inside and doing that playmaking bit that he's pretty good at. And it could be a new touch to us. But again, like if Mbappe comes in as well, then you have another issue where you have Vinicius, Mbappe, Rodrigo. If Brahim stays on as well, then who are you actually going with? So it's difficult, but if I'm speaking honestly, I would like for him to be that pseudo winger role, sort of like the David Silva and sort of like Iniesta, used to play on the left hand side. I would love to see him in that, because I do see that sort of vision, that sort of press resistance, and that sort of close control that he has. I would like to have that sort of winger after being treated for years with Bale and Ronaldo, who are these extreme physical machines, as well as like these speed demons on the wings that we have always had. Like having this sort of intricate, nifty footwork sort of player on the wide areas, who tends to come inside and then have somebody on the overlap to support him, would be pretty interesting. But yeah, it all depends on how the manager situation also shapes up, because if the manager does not prefer to play with that sort of a winger, then that is what essentially happened with Odegaard. So we'll have to see, but I would like to see him be groomed in that sort of pseudo winger role at Madrid, actually.
Yes, there's a couple things you said there that I want to pick up off of, and I think you call out names like Camavinga, Valverde, Tchouaméni. I think the one thing that works in Arda Güler's favor right now is that he's a unique profile within the squad. There's no one quite like him. He's a little bit different than, it feels like the type of players we've been bringing in lately have been all-rounders and guys that are just elite athletes, physical specimen, but can do a little bit of everything. Whereas Arda Güler is unique in that he's kind of got a very specific skill set, but it's one that not many players, if any, in the squad have. So I think that works to his advantage. I think the big thing for him over the next however many years is, does he buy in? Does he buy into being patient? Does he buy into the process? Does he buy into... So far the reports are yes, but after a few years, is he still going to feel this way about, hey, man, I'm still not a full-time starter? Because it may take 4 or 5 years until he gets that role. 3, 4, 5 years, who knows? But eventually, and we've seen it so many times, where you just bide your time, you work hard, somehow things just kind of align and dominoes fall the way squads shift, players get sold, something happens, whatever it may be. But I think he's got to recognize that. He's got to be able to, quote unquote, trust the process and be patient. Whether or not he's willing to do that, because we've seen so many players that aren't, especially players of his talent. That's where the questions come.
Matt, can he be the answer to the progressive passing that you lose when Kroos retires? Do you see it?
I could see it. Again, I think he'd have to be in that deeper role then. I think he'd have to at least be in midfield then.
Yeah.
But he is one of those guys that would help fill that hole, because that's going to be a massive, massive hole to fill when the time comes.
Yeah. There's a... Go ahead, Yash.
I personally don't see that happening, because I can see him breaking lines, but I don't see him bringing that sort of, circulation along with progression bit, because he seems like the sort of player who will look for those vertical options at the first opportunity. Like he'll look to break those lines. He'll look for every minute space to break those opposition lines. Whereas with Kroos, it's very well timed. Like obviously, Kroos is this mammoth of a midfielder at the moment, but yeah, we the difference that Cruz and everybody else has at the moment is how well do you time those passes and how do you pick those moments, how do you set that tempo. And I think that is where I don't see him developing in that direction, and neither would I actually want him to, because I don't want that compromise to happen with the sort of skill set that he has. So yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening. I personally wouldn't want it to happen either. So yeah, that's where I stand on it.
Well, the thing is, he doesn't, like you said, Matt, he would have to drop a little bit deeper to play that Cruz role. And if you look at Cadiz, and again, the sample size on this guy is so small that even if you wanted to dig up some data, there is literally almost nothing to take from. Like, you can't even like look up like, how does this guy do with his progressive passing? Like, the sample size is just not that big to have a long kind of long-term sample of how is this guy doing? How does this guy do, over the course of several, like, there's nothing. There's just nothing. We go by the eye test, we look at it, and we're all impressed. We're trying to look at like how he fits into the team. The reason I brought up the progressive passing part, and if you look at Cadiz, like his heat map, he's basically operating in the opposition's half. Cadiz that's another thing. Cadiz is a different kind of team in that you're not gonna play that deep against a team like that. You're going to be, everyone's pretty much high up the pitch. I'm more interested, like, if you're playing a really, really big team in a big game and your backs are against the wall, I want to see him how he escapes pressure, how he's going to deal with teams who are going to really, really take his space away. I don't know if we're going to really see that in these last remaining games in the league, because
I think we saw a little bit against Real Sociedad, and that's the type of team they are.
That's true.
So that's where I picked that up.
We saw, like, Atletico was the other one, like that's like a big test. But it was not that they're a different kind of team as well, so it's hard to kind of extrapolate that. And it was, I think, an extra time. So Real Sociedad is a good one. I'm actually just gonna check to see his heat map in that game out of curiosity. So yeah, he's playing a little bit deeper in that game. He is. So the reason I brought up the Cruz replacement kind of thing is because Odegaard is right now one of the best in the world in terms of progressing the ball. Like, and we saw it at Real Sociedad too. Like, we're not really surprised he's able to succeed at Arsenal with that respect, because he's a type of player who was always looking vertically, almost never passing it backwards unless he had to. So his first option was to turn around, see what options there are. Can he slice the defense open with a pass? And that's why I kind of brought up, like, can he be, again, there is no Cruz replacement, but can he make up for some of that you'll lose with Cruz? Because the players that we have right now are just different style of play. So that's why I brought it up. But I think also the interesting thing is, like, he can coexist with Fede on that right wing. Fede can play the right CM. He can play on the right wing. They can be a little bit interchangeable if needed. He works really hard defensively, which is a huge plus to me. There were concerns about his physicality. I feel like he can really hold his own. So it also just reminds me a little bit of Brahim's first season with Real Madrid, in that Brahim came mid-season. It was different, but in both cases, we didn't really see Arda in the first half of the season anyway because of his injuries. And then when Zidane took over 2019, we started to see Brahim, when the league was over, Brahim started to play a little bit more. And we were like, oh, this guy's really good. He's a line breaker. He's very impressive. We don't really know what this means because these games mean nothing, but I feel like there is a future here. And then he comes back years later, which now begs the question, do you actually send Guler on loan? My hunch is no. I would like to see him kind of compete. I would like to see him here.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've had too many, as you know, Kiyan, and we know from doing years of loan tracker. It's just you have too many hit and misses with those loans, and I think let him stay in this environment, let him kind of grow up in the Real Madrid culture, and he'll get his opportunities. He's too talented not to, and just continue to take those opportunities. And as we know, over the course of the season, just think about all the injuries, the suspensions, what different types of things that happen. Like, again, it will come. He will get his chances. It's just about continuing to take them. And so far, so good. I mean, he's looked good every single time he's played. So, so I think That's the encouraging sign.
3 positions, right? So Endrick, Vinny, Jude, Rodrigo, Guler, Brahim. I know, like, everyone's like, oh, Joselu. I'm just
Yeah,
not
no,
counting
I
Joselu.
just yeah,
I just like if
I've been saying
Joselu
that for a
wants
while.
to
I don't think
accept the
Joselu.
yeah. If he wants to accept and stay and never play, that's not down to him, I guess. If that happens, but that's 6 for those 3 positions. I'm comfortable with that. I think you'll have enough to go around.
Well, the other thing too with Joselu, like, it's not going to be his fault, but imagine the minutes he does get, and like Endrick and Guler stay on the bench, people are gonna freak out.
Yeah.
Not to say that that's why Carlo Ancelotti or Real Madrid make decisions, but I'm just saying, like, just think about that.
Well, also, like, I can also hear another voice of people saying, well, Jude will play in midfield next season. I just don't think that's gonna happen. I mean, he's gonna naturally play deep a lot because of his playing style, but your Cruz is still here. I think Fede is not being benched. You still need to put Camavinga in midfield. Ceballos is starting to play a little bit more now. So the answer is no. Even if Modric leaves, I don't think. I think you'll just see the front 3. This is interesting. So I don't know if the thing is, like, the Rodrigo now comes off the bench. I think I still don't have an answer to that. My hunch is still it's him that loses that when Mbappe comes. So the pecking order would be something like Rodrigo, Brahim, Arda, Endrick. I don't know. This is not my problem.
Yeah,
this is Carlos' problem.
yeah. I mean, I said it before. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a sale that we didn't really want, i.e., Ibrahim, Joselu and Ibrahim this summer. I would not be the least bit surprised.
I feel like for that to happen, the player has to push his way out. But I don't see any of our guys wanting out.
I think
Yeah.
eventually someone will. Like,
What's that, Yash?
I think eventually someone will.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
that
so
is
too.
that
I think we're about 2 years away from it, though. I don't think it's this
Yeah.
summer. Yeah, I don't think it's this summer. Yeah, these are all big problems, important problems, good problems. There are some cases where this is actually a bad problem to have too much depth. We've seen that before too. So for now, I'm gonna table it as a good problem. We're gonna file it away as a good problem for next season. Also.